Welcome stats fans. Today we're going to be looking at how to make a visual display of a single set of data. That means histogram or box plot. So why this could be useful, again, you might have to check a histogram to see if a set of data, for instance a sample, is nearly normal, or maybe you want to do a quick check to see if there's any outliers, or maybe even graph, let's say, the residuals in a visual display, like the histogram of the residuals, to see what that looks like. So lots of different reasons, and some are for early chapters, some are for later ones, but the basics are as follows. So let's say we have some quantitative data. I'll say the fuel economy for cars. How many miles per gallon do they get? So I'm just making up a set right here. All right, and there we go. So not too many, just 10 numbers, and these are how many miles per gallon 10 different cars get. So if we wanted to make a visual display of this, we could go to, we've already gone to stat. Sorry, I should have started with this. Stat edit is where I found my list. You should probably know that by now. So if we wanted to display it, you could go to second y equals, see how it says stat plot, and you have all these options. So you want to make sure none of them are on because that would interrupt what you're trying to plot. So I turned off plot 3, and then if I go up here, let's say plot 1. So highlight on and hit enter. Now again, what do these all represent? This would be a scatter plot, but again, if you click on that, you'll notice you need 2 sets of data because that's how you do linear regression eventually. There's always 2 sets of quantitative data. That wouldn't even work in this case. Over here, we have histogram, the one that looks like a grouped bar graph. And again, why this can be helpful for you, maybe you don't remember the bin count for all of these, or you don't know which set of data goes where, so this can kind of speed that up for you. X list is just where you found your information. Frequency we keep at 1 because we're assuming each car showed up once. And a couple things. You could either change the window manually, or a common thing that we've learned is go to zoom and go to stat because it will do it very nicely for you. So now if you want to figure out what is in each of these groups right now, you could hit trace up here and it will very politely tell you, all right, this bin, if you will, goes from 12 to 17. There's 1 car in there. Now notice how it says less than 17 because once you hit 17, if you had a car at that amount, you're part of this group. And so this is from 17 to 22. Once, and again, the tick marks on the calculator don't show it. Right here would be like, for instance, here would be 17, here would be 22. Because remember, you're always part of the group to the right. And you can see that here, this would be 27 then. That's what they're trying to imply there. So that's how it's drawn up on an actual graph as opposed to the calculator one. These marks are a little deceiving. So here's our picture. Now again, if you wanted to argue it's skewed, don't fall for that just yet. This is pretty unimodal. This is a huge chunk of things that are very high up with relatively the same amount. I would argue this is pretty unimodal and symmetric. Again, you also only have 10 pieces of data. So the more you get a better feel for what this distribution would look like. Now another useful visual display, if I go to second y equals again, is a box plot. Now box plot graphs your 5-number summary, and this is these 2 right here. I would pick the first option because it's indicating it would show outliers if you had any. Again, you'd want to show work for outliers, but if you are trying to do it really quick, don't have time, you could check and see if there are any just by this visual check. So I go to zoom stat number 9, and again, doesn't look like there's any outliers. If you want to know your 5-number summary very quickly, you could hit trace, and there it is. There's your min, Q1, median, Q3, and max. Another way you can find that 5-number summary would be stat, calc, and 1 variable stats, the very first one. You have 1 list of information, it's list 1. You just skip frequency list, go to calculate, and remember this will tell you all sorts of stuff if you're given the hard stats themselves. Sometimes on the AP test they'll give you this information so you're not spending all this time typing things into your calculator. But 10 things in a list, that's reasonable enough for you to have to possibly enter on your own. And again, what does this all mean? This is the average. The mean is 22.8. Again, miles per gallon. Don't forget the unit that's being talked about. This would be the sum of each of those things. SX, remember, is this sample standard deviation. If we knew the population's standard deviation would be around here, again, if you were asked to like work with something and it was a sample, you'd be dealing with X bar and SX. N is the number of things you put in the list. And if we arrow down, you'll see your 5-number summary, min, Q1, median, and so on. And again, both whether you understand it here or understand it visually, remember the 5-number summary chunks things into 25% increments. So between this minimum here, let's go back. This minimum of 12 and this Q1 of 20, 25% of your cars are there. 25% of the cars are between 20 and 22.5. Same thing here, and so on. Remember, the box is the middle 50% of the data. It's also called the IQR, Q3 minus Q1. All right, so there you have it. That's a couple things about visual displays, histogram, box plot, 5-number summary.